Greetings, Mechwarriors. This is the Beef speaking. Now, you may be asking, Beef, where is Big Red? Do not worry, my friends. The answer is simple. No one else can bring you the full story, the complete knowledge, the depths of understanding of this magnificent warlike mech. Better yet, unlike Red, I can even go over the full Davion intelligence dossier on their first traumatic encounter with this new enemy. The Davions are known, of course, for using their own secret code and language, and the reports, one which the enemies will never be able to decipher. That's right, French. Let us dive into said report, shall we? Mon prince, des rapports arrivent du front sur les capacités de nos ennemis. Nous avons découvert que les clans ont apporté une nouvelle arme sur le champ de bataille. Nos forces croyaient d'un première vue qu'il s'agissait d'un gros bateau de pêche, mais nous avons rapidement déterminé que c'était en fait un Battletech lorsqu'il a commencé à marcher et a ouvert le feu sur nous. Colonel Marcus Roland, force armée du Commonwealth fédéré. It is truly a common mistake to confuse a 100 tons clan super weapon with a large fishing boat. Now, let's dive into this beautiful smoke Jaguar / clan wolf juggernaut, the ultimate weapon platform, the very first mech to be composed of more guns than mech, the dire wolf, or as our friends in the Draconis combine say, the Daishi, meaning the Great Death. A name proven accurate multiple times throughout its bloody history.
Alright, it's time to get this started. What the hell happened to the script? How did I get this? Am I in VoIP right now? Hello? Ah, screw it. I'll record some start for this later. Is that French? I don't even know French.
He doesn't know. It's okay.
What? Hello? Did someone say something? I must be going crazy. Alright, here we go. A clan assault mech weighing in at 100 tons. The direwolf is the inevitable outcome of attempting to perfect the classic assault mech concept while using advanced clan technologies. This battlemech is rightly one of the most feared weapons in the arsenals of the invading Avengers of the exiled Star League Defense Forces. As the name indicates, the direwolf was originally conceived as a clan wolf machine, and was meant to be their supreme assault omnimech, one which took the concept of a breakthrough or counter-breakthrough asset further than anyone had before. What is fascinating about this monster's origin, however, is that the direwolf would not be first constructed by those who conceived it, but instead, before one could even step out from the facilities on Strana Necti, it would fall into the hands of a new master, one more violent and ruthless than almost any of Nicholas Kerensky's ideological descendants, Clan Smoke Jaguar. The Jaguars and the Wolves had a long, tense history with one another, and while Clan Smoke Jaguar's star had slowly started to fade during this time, they were never beyond taking advantage of a situation if they could. Upon discovering the would-be ultimate assault mech, as it was described, they would launch a trial of possession for the mech in all of its capacity. This new, unsurpassed beast would only answer to one master, and it would be the Smoke Jaguars. Forgive me, everyone, for letting the mask slip for but a moment, but as if to make it clear that one of the participants can't lose a fair fight, the Jaguars would, and I quote from Technical Readout 3050 Upgrade, dance on the boundaries of Zelbringen. All the same, after winning their dishonorable victory, the Jaguars would lay claim to the 100-ton steel behemoth in question, locking it in as one of their own prized possessions. The first of these new Titanic figures would stride out of a Huntress production line in 3010, allowing the nightmare dreamt by Wolf technicians, engineers, and scientists to take its full form for the first time. This would be the primary home of this iconic beast for the next 50 years. But this would not be the only portion of the direwolf story, as it would have a second home in the Kerensky cluster as well. Incensed by the loss of one of their secret and unmatched war machines, the wolves wished to launch a trial of refusal for the loss of their prized design. Of course, Star Colonel Ulrich Kerensky realized this, and instead issued only a trial of possession for the rights to manufacture the direwolf, to even the field as it were. He wanted to avoid escalation. As Clan Smoke Jaguar was clearly unable to cheat in the second trial, Clan Wolf would of course go on to win in 3019, and from this point forward, the mech was built and assembled in Wolf Clan Site 1 on Strana Nekti. The Jaguars, in other words, had to learn to share their ill-gotten gains. In clan space, these two clans and these two locations would be the only home the direwolf would know, at least until the invasion. Other clans would desire the mech for themselves, but were never able to sink their claws into it. The mech would see usage, of course, in these other political and military entities, though it would only happen either through paying the iron price, salvaging the mech for themselves, or trading with Clan Wolf and Smoke Jaguar for mechs and their replacement parts. There is, however, during the latter part of these times, another quiet, secret home where the direwolf could be found, and that is on the world of Outreach. The Wolf Dragoons, with their own ties to Clan Wolf, would in secret produce these mechs for their own use during the late 3040s, in the run-up to the clan invasion itself. Obviously, the direwolf would play an overwhelmingly decisive role in Operation Revival. When this unstoppable dreadnought of a Battlemech took to the field during the invasion, there was nothing which could hope to match its firepower. Even in terms of armor, it was as protected as the legendary Atlas. Defense lines would be shattered in the face of its wrath, and whole mech lances or even companies were at risk by its mere presence in a combat zone alone. Nothing is as heavily gunned that appeared at this time, and even a century after its arrival in the Inner Sphere, there just aren't many war machines that carry this kind of firepower. The warriors of Clan Smoke Jaguar deployed it most frequently, and as a result it would be the Draconis Combine that would be forced to face the onslaught of the Daishi, as it would be dubbed, more than any other house. While the Federated Commonwealth and Rasalhague Republic too would be in the sights of these, predominantly through Clan Wolf's employment of the Colossus, the Draconis Combine mustered soldiery would be the ones tasked with bringing down this mammoth most often. Every one of the Inner Sphere states on the receiving end of the clan's ambitions fought valiantly to defend their homes from these alien invaders. But perhaps the Combine would face the most adversity, squaring off against the most heinous of the invaders, and their armada of horrifying beasts, like the direwolf. But the Daishi, and even the economic and devastating Mad Dog, would not be enough to salvage its failed efforts in the Dragon's Lair. Indeed, at the end of the 3050s, it would be the Dragon and its allies that would be responsible for the death of the clan that had once tasted a potential victory on the capital world of the Combine, Luthien. It would be their holdings that would be captured during Operation Bulldog and returned to the legitimate governance of House Kurita. Much to the Jaguar's horror, even with this monster and others like it, such as the venerable Stone Rhino, their territories in the Kerensky cluster and Pentagon worlds would be torn from them, as the clan was annihilated by Task Force Serpent. The Fan Industrialplex, the first facilities that this logical endgame for assault mechs was constructed in, would be destroyed and never recovered, with the loss of Huntress. This, interestingly, was the beginning of the end of the direwolf, at least seemingly. With the fall of Clan Smoke Jaguar, only the Wolf Dragoons and Clan Wolf continued its production. Its manufacturing was never transferred to the Inner Sphere further by the Crusader Wolves, and when the Wars of Reaving took place a decade after the destruction of Clan Smoke Jaguar, any hope of importing more direwolves directly from the home of the clans was ended for the foreseeable future, if not the indefinite future. Outreach's manufacturing base, and its production of direwolves, would face a similar fate as its Jaguar counterpart as a result of the mercenary uprising led by the Dragoons' hated enemy, Wayne Waco, as well as the blackest destruction of most of Outreach, and neither the world or its industries have yet to meaningfully recover, though life at least persists in some form on the planet, at least for humanity. This would seem to be it, for the once most feared assault mech in the entirety of Battletech. While it was still in the inventories of the Inner Sphere clans, these numbers would decline for a time. Instead of finding a new home for it, there was innovation. Other clans simply built their own answers to the direwolf over time. And even for the wolves, they would look towards building a newer, better follow-up to what was an aging design. The Daishi itself, despite its impressive reputation and firepower, has a limited number of battlefield applications as well. So, war itself was seemingly trying to move on from the very premise of what it was. At least in some respects. The Dark Age would further see its decline. Though it was still operated by the Wolves, Clan Seafox, and the Republic of the Sphere, as the latter, an Inner Sphere power, had acquired them in some numbers. As with many other invasion-era mechs which had fallen out of favor, or declined in the years following Operation Revival. In a long, drawn-out downturn, there would be life once more breathed into this mechanical beast, what had once been the face of fear for many in both the Kerensky cluster and the Inner Sphere. A multitude of aging or abandoned clan designs would gradually make their way into the hands of one of the later rivals to the Inner Sphere. Clan Hell Sources, which was industrially and technologically not as advanced as most of the other clans now finding their home in the Inner Sphere, in the late 3140s, with the capture of much of the former Wolf occupation zone, would be the new home for this once most coveted weapon. Many of these new facilities, though mostly disassembled, came with the bones and plans for many Battlemechs of old. Machines like the Gargoyle and Timberwolf are now manufactured by this clan, and the Direwolf was no different, with the Titan striding out of Industrialplex Delta on Svarstad as a result of this windfall. Inevitably, it was brought back into production for the same reason that it seemingly was assigned as the chariot of so many famous figures. Whether it be Victor Steiner-Davion or Natasha Kerensky, the Direwolf was used as their mount for a reason. Simply put, it is absolutely devastating. The Direwolf may have a new master because of the events which have unfurled in the Dark Age and Ilclan era, and it may have fierce competition in its weight bracket in these new times, but it is still one of the most powerful and overwhelming battlemechs ever brought to life within the setting. To look upon it is to stare upon one of the greatest works of artisanship ever conceptualized by the clans, and it is to know despair. The 31st century born, 100-ton Clan Omni assault mech of nightmares known as the Direwolf, or alternatively as the Daishi by the Inner Sphere, is a relatively straightforward powerhouse which can, and will, rip through almost any opponent that is put in front of it. Relying on a mixture of advanced clan engine technology and weaponry, this feared monstrosity can bludgeon and overwhelm almost any opposition that comes before it. While many of its immediate peers in Technical Readout 3050 tend to be marvels in some way, using more than just XL engines such as the Executioner, Warhawk, or Gargoyle, the Direwolf's simplicity is an advantage in two distinct ways. First, it doesn't require many advanced materials to build, once more outside of its engine. And second, it leaves most of its critical space wide open, and this latter point is its biggest advantage in-game. You would think this would impact its omnipod space, for instance, but not really, at least not in a meaningful way, as the Direwolf has an absolutely tremendous 50.5 tons of open and available pod space. This volume of emptiness allows it to install, functionally, almost any set of weapons one could imagine. It has the tonnage for ballistics, energy systems, missiles, or any combination of them, as well as enough spare weight to fill in any needed number of heat sinks or ammunition required to embolden its offensive systems to achieve battlefield success. This is, realistically, the most important component of the direwolf and its success. To keep itself cool, which can be an enormous struggle for the direwolf, the Battlemech comes with an already significant investment in onboard heatsinks. These amount to 15 in total, letting it cool 30 per turn. Frankly, this isn't always adequate, but as a clan omnimech, it can install yet more heatsinks on board. There is seldom any configurations of the direwolf that won't do just that. Because it is simply so heavily gunned, it is nearly impossible to avoid without having catastrophic shortcomings for the Battlemech. When it comes to its internal components beyond this, though, it is as simple as it sounded in the beginning. It has standard armor, a standard gyro, and a standard cockpit. These components not being advanced saves it critical space. When it comes to electronic components, the direwolf is well served by a TJ6 Bell integrated communication system, as well as a Mars System 9 targeting and tracking system. The latter of these provides the direwolf with the stunningly effective improved targeting long trait. This means it has a bonus to hit in the long distance range bracket, which is exceptionally impressive. This only applies when using the advanced rules, however. As with most good things in life though, there is a trade-off, and in the case of the Daishi, it has, unfortunately, the difficult ejection quirk. This once more applies with the advanced rules, and the attribute does what you might imagine. Ejecting from a direwolf may be more complicated than its pilots wish for it to be. I am sure Natasha Kerensky herself might have found this to be frustrating at some point. In order to save weight, the Daishi uses Clan XL technology. This does make the mech more vulnerable to engine damage, but Clan XL engines are less immediately lethal than their Star League ancestors, in that each side torso only has 2 engine slots taken up, rather than 3. This leaves more critical to install weaponry, but also ensures that if the side torso is removed, the mech itself, while crippled, won't be completely disabled. Speed as a whole, however, is not the strong suit of the direwolf, though it is far from as crippled as mechs like the Inner Sphere's Annihilator. Powered by a 9.5-ton Starfire 300 XL fusion power plant, this Smoke Jaguar assault mech can reach a maximum speed of 54 km per hour, or 5 movement points in the tabletop game. The direwolf, more or less, is locked into being a breakthrough, or counter-breakthrough mech as a consequence. This, however, is what the mech was built to do. Low movement can be a problem. If the mech is trapped in dense terrain, or is being assailed by multiple, lighter enemies who can disguise themselves with cover, there could be severe problems for the Battlemech, despite its powerful weaponry and heavy armor otherwise. All the same, this weakness just comes with the territory. The mech is not built to be nimble or fast. It is built to annihilate anything that comes in front of it. As one can guess, as a breakthrough mech with a lack of speed, the direwolf does compensate for this by simply having an enormous amount of protection stacked on top of it. There isn't much to say here though, despite how impressive it is. First, because it's a clan mech, it has a case built automatically into the frame. That's just because of the nature of its construction. Beyond this, the Daishi is armored in a similar capacity to an Atlas, in that it has 19 tons of standard armored plating, which gives it 304 points of armor. This makes it incredibly durable, even by clan standards. In other words, it can take 20 clan PPC shots to clear the entirety of its exterior plating, more or less. Without this level of protection, the direwolf would struggle. Thankfully, for this Colossus, this isn't the case. It is a bastion of defense, on top of its fantastically deadly weapons configurations. The most recognizable and commonly deployed configuration of the direwolf, is a very heavily gunned mishmash of firepower. While it tends towards long-range striking power, it combines a series of weapons, in large quantities, that are simply not quite often seen together. To begin this examination, let us start by going over its non-weapon upgrades. In order to support the mech's extreme heat load, the Prime installs 7 additional heatsinks, bringing its cooling total to a shocking 44 per turn. Sadly, for pilots of this machine, it will need every single cooling factor that it can use to keep it running even remotely cool. Moving into its primary armaments, it has 4 Clan ER large lasers, with 2 in each arm. These reach out to insane ranges, and each hits for 10 damage, the same as an Inner Sphere AC-10 autocannon. They punch holes in armor quite easily, and their range brackets are exceptional. The problem is, they generate 12 heat each, which means firing all 4 exceeds the heat threshold of the direwolf by 4 should it not move. If it uses other weapons alongside these, the thermal situation can become extremely critical for the pilot and the mech itself. Next up, it has twin Ultra AC-5 autocannons, with 1 in each arm and 20 rounds of ammunition per cannon. These hit for reasonable damage at long ranges, but aren't as wowing as the ER large lasers on board. What's great about them is that they generate significantly less heat than its focused light projecting counterparts. Finally, in the arms, for close range engagements, the direwolf has 4 medium pulse lasers, once more split between its limbs. These are highly accurate and strike for good damage. These don't necessarily pair well with the large lasers though. At least of all are firing, for the obvious reason of causing the mech to melt into the surface of the planet it is fighting on. As the last system on board, it has an LRM-10 launcher with 1 ton of ammunition. So, how is the Prime? It's busy. It has a great deal of mismatched weapon systems that only kind of complement one another. The real problem is, the ER large laser consumes so much of its heat budget, and are the best way to deliver reliable damage, that the other systems either see limited use, or cause the mech to overheat more than it otherwise should. While the Prime variants are the most popular and frequent amongst the clan warriors who pilot them, it seems to be a mech that just mismanages, to some degree, its impressive weapons tonnage. One of the configurations first encountered by the Inner Sphere during the clan invasion itself, the Direwolf A is a spectacularly brutal battlemech. While perhaps not as heavily gunned as some of its later offshoots, the A has the benefit of fighting well in all ranges, but also of being cool running, and having extremely accurate fire. As per usual, beginning with its non-weapon systems, the A comes with 6 additional heatsinks, bringing its entire cooling capabilities to 42 per turn. This is extremely helpful, and when factoring in its weapons loadout, the Direwolf A can alpha strike at any range without overheating, making it a consistent deliverer of death on the battlefield. Then, for further protection, it has an AMS with a full 72 rounds of fire. This means that it can be put into extremely long deployments, all while having the shield of an AMS system. But where would the fun be without going over its weapons? The real stars of the show. The A configuration's bombardments will start with the weapon of choice for many, which is a Gauss rifle, and this is mounted in its left arm. This magnetic cannon does exceptional damage, and threatens heads with decapitation. Better yet, on top of that, it has 24 rounds of fire, once more letting it have a protracted presence on the battlefield. As if this was not enough, it is also equipped with 3 clan large pulse lasers in the right arm. These pair exceptionally well with the Gauss rifle, and generate 30 points of heat collectively when fired. But more importantly, they hit with precision at any range, and reach out to a horrifying 20 hexes. with each delivering 10 damage per strike. Or in other words, with the force of an inner sphere PPC or AC-10 autocannon. These will rip holes in targets every turn, especially with the advanced rules and clan pilots. Together, the mech generates 31 points of heat for all of these systems. So what are the other heat sinks for? Well, if fighting gets to 12 hexes or less, the A has twin streak SRM-6s, which unlike the other systems are found in its left torso rather than its arms. These collectively generate 8 points of heat when fired, and when a target lock is confirmed to be clear, they do fantastic scatter damage and can be the downfall of many enemies, especially after being softened up by the Gauss rifle and the pulse lasers. This means while running, the Direwolf A, if it alpha strikes, generates 41 points of heat. It will ruthlessly punch more holes into its enemies than a malcontent assaulting a stack of paper with a hole puncher. Then, if things get close, it will scattershot the targets while continuing to hole punch it until victory is achieved. Barring damage to its engine, or extreme environmental hazards as well, this Daishi will do all of this without even breaking its heat barrier. Terrifying. Developed during the clan invasion era, and seeing the light of day for the first time in 3054, the C configuration of the Direwolf is a wild deviation to the Prime, with a host of new features and a massive array of weaponry. When it comes to its non-lethal components, it has an impressive number of additional features added to its base attributes. First, and most fascinatingly, it has 3 jump jets installed, helping this Direwolf navigate its way through dense terrain, and potentially offering it ambush and flight opportunities, as well as just a buff to its general mobility. To enhance its survivability, it then installs an ECM suite, giving it an extra invisible layer of defense. For cooling, of course, heat sinks are added, in this case an additional 8, taking its maximum cooling to 46 per turn, which is just wild. But, and of course saving the best for last, it has an almost criminally effective targeting computer upgrade. To say that the C is set up for success is most definitely an understatement, though it's not without its faults. To begin diving into its weaponry, it has twin clan ER-PPCs, which, as I've mentioned in previous videos, hit with the force of a Gauss rifle, and these are divided into 1 in each arm. Then, for close-range fighting, it has 4 clan medium pulse lasers, which are extremely accurate, especially when paired with the targeting computer, to anything that dares to even think about approaching the C at medium ranges. These are all installed into the torso, with 1 in the right and 3 in the left. There is a single SRM-4 streak installed into the head too, but it's a one-shot launcher, meaning that it has no additional ammunition beyond its first volley. Finally, once more distributed into the arms, it has a pair of ATM-6 launchers, which have 1 ton of ammunition each. With this limited amount of ammo, it can't really effectively switch between ammunition types, and it only has 10 rounds of fire. But truth be told, with the right missiles selected per system, this will have devastating effects. Overall, the C is an intriguing direction for the Direwolf's usage. It's more mobile, it has electronic countermeasures, it is extremely well cooled, being able to fire all of its energy weapons in a single turn. It has a targeting computer, which is horrifying, and it has a series of buckshot missiles just in case things need to be pushed over the edge. Overall, while there are other Direwolves which hit harder, there aren't many that hit smarter. As a consequence of the Blakist era, walking into battle for the first time in 3069, the Direwolf D is one of the most terrifying mechs ever constructed. With its immense pod space, it can take full advantage of heavy ballistic weaponry, and get great returns on it. There are no upgrades to the chassis in this instance, it's all just guns. It doesn't need better cooling either, as what it's throwing into the world isn't going to be sending it into a high Celsius meltdown. Its loadout is actually pretty simple. 2 medium pulse lasers in the center torso with an ER small laser in the head. Then it has a Streak SRM-6 in the left torso with 15 rounds of fire. All of these are its backup weapons, however, because the real act is definitely a showstopper. The D configuration's main trick is, simply put, a pair of Hag 40 systems, with one in each arm. These offensive tools are some of the most feared weapons in the game. They are great sandblasting cannons, and will wither away a target to nothing. They are like the sands of time, simply washing away any mech that comes before it. With 15 rounds of ammunition per cannon too, this monster will likely not leave the field before untold amounts of carnage have been delivered. It is a truly terrifying weapons platform, and one to be very much respected. There is hardly a pilot in the setting, even ones piloting super heavy Battlemechs, that would look upon this configuration standing in opposition to them, and not question what decisions led to the misfortune of having to face it. The latest development of the Direwolf's configurations comes from 3142, during the latter part of the Dark Age. Ironically, some years before the mech would be manufactured in the Inner Sphere once more by Clan Hell's horses. Most T configurations are a reimagining of the original primes, and while sometimes they get the mix wrong, other times they are superb upgrades over their original counterparts. This variation is one of the instances that definitely changed the role of the mech, but also gave it an excellent upgrade over the original, despite a small fraction of lost firepower at different ranges. When it comes to extra chassis features, this time around the Direwolf installs 5 additional double heatsinks, letting it cool 40 every turn, which is very respectable for its loadout. A light active probe is added to help onboard sensors when dealing with electronic warfare. Most impressively though, regarding core chassis upgrades using Omnitech, the T configuration installs a supercharger on board, allowing the Direwolf to get bursts of speed up to 64 km per hour, which will help it close with targets or to get into more ideal range brackets as needed. And now, we get to the weaponry. 4 medium pulse lasers are installed with 2 in each arm. These help it deal with mid-range targets, and provide precise violence as needed. 4 Clan ER medium lasers are then installed, which do good enough damage, and are backups for the medium pulse lasers. It then replaces out the original Prime's LRM-10 with an LRM-10 Streak, which is honestly somewhat of a questionable decision, as Streak LRM-10s cannot fire indirectly, but it does save on ammunition and heat in a failed attack attempt. To conclude this examination, and this ensemble of offensive power, the Daishi T has a pair of Hag 20 cannons, with 1 in each arm. These have great range, and hit much harder and more reliably as well as effectively than the original's Ultra AC-5 autocannons. Overall, the Direwolf T is somewhat tamer in terms of firepower than some of its more notorious variations, but it is a reliable damage dealer, and has solid weapons at every range bracket, that can more than bring the pain as needed. Alright, that covers all the variants I was going to go over for the Direwolf today, so let's get into the conclusion.
But you missed one variant.
Is that beef? Well, reasonably speaking, I actually missed closer to a half a dozen, but I don't get every variation per video, to be clear.
No, you missed the most significant one, the one they need to know.
That's unnecessarily cryptic. I can't think of anything that I really missed that feels that important. And how are you here again?
The ultimate weapon. It is Storm.
Beef? No. That's an MWO thing. It's never translated into tabletop. I've got to get this video done, man. You can't just...
Perfect. Now, my friends, we can begin to look over the most controversial Direwolf variations. a mech considered a war crime by the Irish conventions, the Dire Star. This 100-ton customized clown omnimech configuration is quite cryptic, as it removes all unnecessary components the mech has. You like the direwolf because it had armor? You are wrong! The first thing Star Captain Iron Reaver did when he designed this beautiful beast is to remove over 15 tons of useless protective armor plating. Why? Because the guns this machine has provides all the protection it needs. You cannot get destroyed if you just destroy the other side first. The best defense is a ridiculous amount of offense. But how can a Dire Star do this, you may ask? The answer is simple, my friends. Come closer and pay attention. It has 11 PPCs. That's right, 11 particle projection cannons are distributed across the machine. The main goal of this mech configuration is to eliminate a high priority target of the field from extreme range with a single high velocity alpha strike. Say, an enemy command mech, perhaps? This requires the right aiming skills, of course. I assure you, my friends, no one can survive a burst of 165 damage of glorious man-made lightning. They shall be terrified when the thunder calls. Of course, there is only one minor problem that the Dire Star has, and it is not its 3.5 tons of standard armor, because 66 tons of PPCs easily makes up for that. No, it's that maybe if you use your weaponry, the mech will shut down for, 5 rounds of combat. This doesn't matter though, because if you just hit the target, the Dire Star's purpose is fulfilled. Exhale slowly and take aim. Override all mech safeties. Lightly touch the Alpha Strike button. Close your eyes. Everyone dies.
What more is there to say about the direwolf? Its canonical configurations are some of the most dangerous things to ever step foot on the battlefield in either the 31st or 32nd centuries. While it has been replaced in many clan armies, it's not truly obsolete, simply because the Dark Ages Clan Tomahawk Omni Assault Mech in theory has 5.5 tons more pod space on board. In no way removes the direwolf from being a completely sinister specter to have standing in opposition to your forces, should it appear. Its guns will still sing just as loudly, and just as dangerously as the days it stormed the front lines of Luthien, or Tukayad. Its return, through Clan Hell sources, must be an unwelcome one for anyone who must face them, most assuredly. Its influence in the story as well is truly felt on multiple levels. It is the Battlemech of choice for many heads of state, even in the inner sphere. Leo Showers, Victor Steiner-Davion, Natasha Kerensky, and Kurita Hohiro all called upon the direwolf as their steel steeds when they needed to march into battle. There is no doubt, for an entire generation of Mechwarriors and commanders, seeing a direwolf appear is one of the most frightening things to have ever happened to them, especially with any foreknowledge of what it was. It holds the reputation of being the supreme assault mech of the 31st century, and it's genuinely hard to argue against that. Where it treads, it, and those who deployed it, hold the line. You make a choice to win, and you win.
Thank you everyone for joining myself and Big Red here today. You can find me over at the Beef's channel, link if you scroll down below. Please, do not forget to like and subscribe to support the tremendous amount of work that went into this video. Thank you for watching and have a great rest of your day, my friends.